So I wanted to do a video on Motor, and I wanted to do it similar to the one I did on Bone Mats. I wanted to talk about his weaknesses, how you're supposed to defeat it, and all that stuff. But, well, he's not that hard of a boss, and he's also not that fun of a boss, and it's actually kind of hard to talk about him just because of how dull of a boss he actually is. Like, as far as advice goes, I would say just bring a bow, bring a sword or some other melee weapon, and just don't stand still. If you stand still, he'll hit you. But as long as you're doing pretty much any level of movement, he's just stupidly easy. So with that said, I'm actually going to talk about how the developers could improve him, how they could fix him, how they could make him actually entertaining, as well as highlighting the major problems with him. So to start off, the biggest problem with Motor is the fact that he is just a copy and paste Skyrim dragon. He does the exact same, fly around in circles, stop for a little bit, do a breath attack, fly around in circles more, land, couple melee attacks, hop back in the air, fly around, repeat. It's just, it's not a very engaging fight. Skyrim dragons were designed for a one-on-one fight where they put light pressure on the player but give them lots of time to heal. Now, in Valheim, A, your health recovers a lot faster, B, you have multiple people attacking the boss, and C, well, the fact that there's multiple people means that it needs to be able to actively engage multiple people. And the breath attack has minimal splash effect, the melee attack has minimal splash effect, and there's no extra layer to the boss fight. It's just, well, group up, hit it until it dies, that's it. Now, when I talked to Kaff about this, I used the term, it needs to force the players to change how they engage, or the boss needs to do something in order to break up the routine. And Kaff had a much better term. Fred just said that they need a way to disrupt or otherwise control the player's momentum. And, like, I guess flying around is a good way to stop momentum completely, but it also means that the boss itself isn't that much present there. Because it's up in the air, it's spitting things, you just waddle around a little bit. There isn't really any presence while the boss is flying, it's just there. Now, me and Kaff then talked a fair while suggesting different things that the boss could do to break up the momentum in order to make it where the players have to engage him and have to shift how they play. But in the end, it boils down to about three basic factors. It needs a way in order to do some sort of controlling effect on players. Either freeze them, poison them, slow them, do some sort of ticking damage. In this case, because it's an ice dragon in the mountains, I would recommend that it just makes people wet. Because if people are wet, then the freezing damage from the biome can take effect. Now, the second way is AoE. That is either doing area of effect damage or pushing the players around or doing something that makes it so the players have to disengage either by being thrown or disengage because their HP is too low. If they could get it where Motor forces players to cycle in and cycle out in order to, change who the front line is, change who the back line is, and stuff like that, it would just make the fight a lot more engaging. So if they went the route of knockback, given that it is the mountain terrain, knockback would make it would make it a lot more of a threat because it has the chance to throw you off the side of a cliff, push you off the side of the mountain. It also makes the whole prepare by building in the area kind of thing a lot more important, which would be a good thing, honestly. And the third and final way that they could make the boss significantly better would be just give him some movement abilities. And you look at stuff like the Sultan Sanctuary dragon. He has the tail flick, which does massive AoE, pushes people around, and then after he pushes people off of him, he has a dive attack in order to single out a single player. And then when if you're two on one-ing him, then when the other player starts to engage is generally when he decides to fly back into the air and then do a strafing run and then hits the ground again before diving, and it kind of becomes a cycle of him isolating a single player, then attacking that single player with as much as he can before they have a chance to group up, and then backing off once they have grouped up. And it means that you have to find the flow of the boss a lot more, and you have to follow that flow. So it boils down to it needs either a form of control, a form of AoE or threat, or a form of mobility and isolation. Now, preferably it would probably have a little bit of all of these elements, but if they go hard into one, that is fine too. Honestly, pretty much anything will improve this boss at this point. It is just so dull. To look at an example within Valheim itself that did a good job at being a boss, let's look at the Elder. It had a strong melee attack with some knockback. It had the ability to summon vines, which kind of just smacked any players who got near the vines. And it had a ranged vine attack that, although it was relatively easy to dodge, was also a fair bit of a threat due to its rather high damage output. The summon vines meant that if you went in with a party, you kind of had to deal with the vines, or you would just be receiving constant damage during the entire fight. And if everyone in your party is taking constant damage, you're pretty much just going to lose. So this meant that Elder had something to engage at a range, he had something in order to gauge a group, he had something in order to gauge in melee, and the fact he had a heavy attack meant that if you were consistently engaging him in melee, you would eventually have to back off due to low HP. All in all, this made him a somewhat hard and rather engaging boss. From looking at other bosses, we can tell that the design team or the dev team, whatever you want to call them, has an idea of how bosses are supposed to function. It's just that Motor is kind of an outlier. He doesn't seem to be as engaging as any of the other bosses. Motor as a boss he's not bad enough that I can get angry and start like attacking his character design, but he's not good enough to praise either. He's just dull and boring and more of a waste of time than an actual fight. This also means that it's kind of hard to criticize because there's nothing there to really attack. He doesn't do anything. And how do you attack something that doesn't do anything? It's there, it's present. Congratulations. Like, fucking really. But the game is in beta. Maybe Motor will get some love. They'll give him some abilities. They'll give him something that makes him just not a copy and paste of fucking Skyrim dragons. But until then, it's just a lot of potential squandered. Please, developers, give Motor some love. Give him something. Make him a fun boss. Make him actually entertaining to fight for the love of all that is Valheim. Anyway, I've been Junkar. In the future, I'm going to have the script already written before I promise to make a video about a boss, because Jesus Christ, talking about a boss that has nothing to him is just, it's incredibly dull to write, it's incredibly dull to listen to, it's just horrible. Anyway, have a nice day.